Okay, so another great thing about the A-frame component system is that anyone can write a component and contribute to the A-frame component registry. And this is a way to add in a lot of different functionality to our projects that are not necessarily included in the A-frame platform already. So let's look at the physics system component. And you get here, sorry, we should look at what this is. It's aframe.o/aframe-registry. And this is where there's a lot of different components that you can add to your project. Here's an ocean, for example. There's so many things. So let's look at, I put physics, I meant to put particle. So we can add a particle system. And this is a public registry. Anyone can add this to their A-frame projects. The only difference is that with things in the component registry, we need to add in a piece of code to our project in our header. So for example, if we go down here, it gives the uses examples, and then they give us a browser installation example. And just the same way that we need to add in our A-frame scripts for the A-frame library, we also have to add in their particle system component script to our header. So we go here and we copy this, and then we go to our project, and in our script, in our header tag, where we have our other script for our A-frame library, we paste in our script for the particle system component. If we don't paste in the script, it won't work when we try to add in the component. So let's now go back and see what we can do with it. So it tells us that there's presets that we can use. So there's the default, there's dust and snow, so we can write those in. There's the particle's age, the position spread, the type, the default is a box, all of these different things that are properties of the particle system components, duration, size. I'm going to grab their example of dust and copy it and paste it into my scene. So we have the particle system component here. It's just an entity with position, and then the preset is dust. I'm also going to add in particle count so you can see it. Sometimes they, by default, don't have a, put 10,000. Okay, let's see next code. Okay, it's there, but it's super light, these white dots floating around because our background sky is very light. So let's change this to blue so you can see it. There. So now we have these dust particles floating around in the sky, and it kind of looks like pollen or something. And we don't have to animate it because the particle system is doing all of it for us. So we just change the attributes. We could change the position of it. Let's see if we bring it to -1. Okay, so see, this is floating a lot closer to me immediately. So the dust is closer to where my camera is positioned and floating by me. Let's look at some of the other presets. Rain. So I could just change this preset from dust to rain. This one probably looks a little better farther away because the raindrops are big. So there is my rain particle system. I like the dust. I'm going to put it back to dust. So let's look at another component in the registry. Let's go to environment. Here it is, the environment component. So this gives us a simple way of setting up a whole basic environment for your A-frame VR scene. Wow, that's pretty cool. Here's our script that we need to add into our header. So let's copy that and go up here to our header tag and add in our environment component script tag. And then let's look at the documentation. Add the environment component to an entity. Okay, so let's just copy that and see what by default it puts in here. Entity. Oh, whoa. Maybe this background needs to go now because we have a environment. Interesting. It's kind of stuck. Let's see what else we can do. Okay, so we can change the preset. Let's change the preset. Preset, environment preset. Here. Let's do, let's try dream. So preset. Show in any window. That looks pretty cool. Why is it disabling my camera and my controllers? It might have to be, sometimes things like particle systems and environment components will interact with each other. Let's see if I have anything missing here. I have this script tag, has all the pieces to it. Let's see if we disable, or if we disable this particle system for a second, if this will help us. Yes. So the particle system is interfering with the environment component, and that is something that happens sometimes with components. So we'll have to figure that out before we include both. So if you are trying a lot of different components and you add one and it does something to your scene, like it causes it to freeze or something else doesn't work, chances are there's something that is interacting between the components that's causing it to load in a certain way and get stuck. So we can see here, I see, so this plane is at the same plane as this. So let's move up our plane. It's currently at 0. Let's move it up to 0.5. Let's see how that. Okay, so now it's not interacting. So the grass is there. If I move it down, so we hide it, if I move it down to -1, it'll go below. So this is the default environment of the dream. It gives us these mushrooms and this kind of terrain and this checkerboard and pink gradient sky. Let's see what else we can change. So we can change the sky color or gradient We have that. I like the gradient. The lighting, distant or point, the shadow size, fog, dressing. Oh, that's interesting. So we have cubes, pyramids, trees. Let's try adding in some towers. And we have some mushrooms there already. And the dressing amount is 10. So let's see how we add in some towers and more mushrooms. Preset is dream. Dressing towers. What did that do? Oh, okay, so we have these towers here now instead of mushrooms. Let's see if we can add in towers and mushrooms. Nope. What else can we do with that? Additional objects. Let's do the dressing amount. Let's see, we have 10 right now. Dressing amount, which is mushrooms, let's put 100. Is that gonna give me a lot? Oh. Let's see if I do 5. Oh, there's one little mushroom. So it's spacing them out and putting a lot less when I do 5. Here's 20. I liked 100. There's lots of mushrooms. So I can only do one environment component at a time because it sets the whole environment for me. Let's see what other kinds of presets there are. Let's look at, let's try Tron. What does this look like? Oh, that's pretty cool. Let's see, what else can we do with that? Active show hides the component, seed, horizon color lighting. Let's add a fog. So fog, the amount of fog, 0 is none and 1 is full. The color is estimated automatically. Okay, so let's add a fog. Let's do fog 0.5. 1. Oh, that's a lot of fog. And this is probably why it interferes with the particle component. I had this before. Fog and particles interact with each other. Let's do, there's a lot of difference between 0.9, 0.8, and 1. So there's a fog. And the way that fog works is that as we travel through the environment, the fog kind of always recedes into the distance. So there's a distance between the fog. The fog is a part of the environment and you never really get there. So you can add in, if you want to add a lot of fog, then you would have, the fog will kind of chase you. as you walk through the environment or move through the environment with the camera, that fog is going to kind of be present always. And then as you move towards objects, they'll get revealed depending on how thick and how deep the fog is. So it's taking us a while. Oh, that might be part of the horizon of the environment. That's probably the background there. So if we placed in more objects, we could come upon them as they're revealed. So let's do that again. The way that our sphere is revealed in the fog there. So that's pretty cool. So let's look at another component. Let's go to the shader frog. I think there's a component. Oh, it's not in the registry. There is npm A-frame shader frog. Yeah, so here's the shader frog. Some of the A-frame components are not listed necessarily in the registry. These are ones that have been, a lot of them were created at a certain time. So a lot of them are part of the A-frame gathered components, but people still, you can just search the NPM website for any packages for A-frame, and they might not necessarily be in the registry. So here's one that uses shaders from Shader Frog, and it gives us specific directions on what to do. So there's built-in shaders that they've gotten from Shader Frog that we can use. And here's our script. So let's add that into our header up here for Shader Frog. And then let's go to their example. So the shader is similar to a material, but it applies, shaders are a little bit more complex than materials. They also include, it's the way that the material will interact with the light, and it's built into the shader. Shaders are a complex field. They are a field unto themselves. Some people only work on shaders. But it's great to see what we can do with some of these components. So shader free, I don't know what goo is, but let's see. It's taking a sphere component entity and it's applying this on here. Ooh. So I have this emissive, gooey. Let's get the fog down, because the fog now is, let's do 0.4 on that fog. Let's get a new window. Oh, the spheres are overlapping. Let's move that sphere. This sphere is going to be -2. There we go. Okay, so we have this shader on this sphere, and it's not only changing the surface, it's also changing this shape of the sphere because it's a goo shader. So it's the way that the material interacts with light. And it's sort of, the shader is kind of trying to make a gooey liquid-like thing. So the shader is applied to the sphere object, but it's making it behave in the certain gooey, light, colorful, foggy way. Let's see another shader. Let's do the box shader. polka dot shader. So the shader could be a texture, but this is applied as a shader. Let's look at some of the flowing circles shader. I bet that one is going to move around. So let's look at that. Let's change it from polka dot shader to flowing circles shader. Oh, there we go. So now we have this kind of like lava lamp flowing circles shader. And you can apply these shaders to all kinds of different things. So maybe I'd want to make a kind of puddle on the ground. I could make a plane turn into a gooey thing, or maybe I want to make a lamp out of this kind of shader. There's a lot of different things that you can do with shaders. And again, it's a complex field. If you look into the background here of how to customize a shader, you'll go down a rabbit hole, which you can do. Oh, that's a fun one. But for now, the shader component is just useful to bring in these different kinds of shaders in your project really quickly. So a lot of the components that we've been looking at have done things specifically for editing our entities. But there are also some components that are tools for us. So for example, the layout component is something that, let's say you wanted to have an even amount, a row of spheres that are aligned in a circle around you. You can use the layout component to lay out objects. And this is really a tool for you to use more so than it is about changing the way the components look, although it does that too. So let's grab this, and it gives us the kinds of ways that we can lay out all these things. And this can help so that you don't have to move everything by hand each time. If you want to have a symmetrical layout, this makes it really fast. So here's a script for that, and I will go back here to my header tag and add in that layout script. And I'll go back to their example. And let's just do this entity layout. And then, okay, I can add all of these entities. And it's going to put them in a circle with a radius of 10. So let's add that here. Okay, so those boxes, they're low. Let's bring them up a bit. Entity, let's do position equals 0, 2, 0. Okay, so now there's a box. There's a box. Let's look at the inspector. Okay, oh, I see. So it's doing this on that axis with all of these boxes. So let's go to that entity. Oh, let's see, environment. Here it is. Oh, and you can see here in the inspector, my component, I have this layout component. So I can change this plane here. X, Y. Let's do Y, Z. Let's do X, Z. Y, Z. Oh, it doesn't want me to do Y, Z. Z, Y, X, Y. Okay, what if we rotate it? So if we do this, oh, there we go. So I want to rotate it -90, and I'm going to make the margins. So I make the margin smaller. Margin column smaller? No. Column. Oh, I guess it depends on. Oh, so these are all the different ways that we can lay these out. We can lay all these different patterns. Oh, here, the radius. Let's make the radius smaller. And I'll do the position. Okay, I'll do the position -3 and the rotation -90. So let's go back here. Rotation -90, 0, 0. And then the position, I'll add the -3 on the Z axis. Okay, so now you can see I am surrounded by a circle of evenly spaced out cubes that I can control all at once. So that really helps me to lay things out a little bit quicker than placing all of those cubes one by one. And so that's a really handy component because it lets us build things a little bit faster. So I could now do a scale on this. Let's do scale. And add that to all the boxes. That's what I want, scale 1, 1. Oops. All right, so let's look at that. Oh gosh. So far, make sure we're doing. Ooh, cool. So it's scaling, yeah, in the X direction. I could scale it in 10, 10. That's what I wanted. And now I'm building out this kind of structure by having all these cubes. I don't know what it is. I'm just kind of playing with the dimensions and seeing what it does. But it lets me do a lot of different things just by having that component where I can lay out those objects in a grid or in a circle and play with it. And this is also an example of an object, an entity that has a child object. So this is, the parent is the entity that it is wrapped in, and all of these will move the same according to how I move the parent object. So the parent entity is wrapping all of these, so I can move them all at once. So now if I wanted to put them higher, I can put them all higher at once by putting, move them up 9 on the y-axis, and it should move that up all higher. So now it's all a pie like that, and it is all at once. I don't have to do that to all of these. But you can only do that with certain things. So I don't think it works with scale because that's something that is individual to the box itself. And this doesn't have a geometry. So the geometry is what scales. This is kind of like a container object that we can move everything, we can rotate it, and we can lay it out. But since itself doesn't have a geometry, if we want to scale the geometry, we have to do it individually on each line here because what the scale is doing is affecting the geometry component. So that's how that works. So take some time, look through the kinds of different things that you can do, how you can lay things out, look through the A-frame registry, see if you can add things. There's certain things like leap hands, for example. This is something that in order to use, you need a headset to be able to see it. So that will come later. Here's some linear interpolation, a line component, so you can draw lines. A log component, so you can see the console log, you can see the kind of readout for the frame rate and everything. Again, some of these are not going to be easy to use without other equipment, but you might try something like the mountain and creating terrains. Try a few different components, see if you can get them to work and add them into your project. And the next tutorial will be specifically on 3D models. Bye.